The subject of today's video has one of the most impossible stories in this year's draft class. At one point, Jayden Higgins was a 2-star recruit who did not have a single FBS offer. For some reason, pretty much every big-time program in the state of Florida decided to pass on him, despite his obvious physical talent, but instead, he had to go the FCS route, where after 1 year at Eastern Kentucky, he leveraged his way into a Power 4 offer at Iowa State. Since then, he became one of the best wide receivers in Iowa State Cyclones football history, tore up the Big 12, and found himself going in the second round to the Houston Texans. He signed a historic second-round contract and is now seen as a key piece for the Texans' future. But how did Jayden Higgins get to this point? Well, in today's video, we're to go through his journey, his rise from 2-star recruit to second-round stud, and his potential impact early on. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you didn't support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Jayden Higgins. So in order to talk about how Higgins got to this point, we first need to go back in time, down to the Florida area. Jayden Higgins' journey is a testament to the blend of relentless work and the talent necessary to make it to the league. He became the first player from his high school to ever get picked in the NFL draft, and will also become the first Westminster Christian alum to appear in an NFL game. When you play your high school football down south in South Florida, people think of guys like Dalvin Cook, Anquan Bolden, or Nick Bosa. Between the 305 and 954, the amount of star power that's entered the draft and become stars has been abundant. Early on, Jayden Higgins worked hard. He practiced on empty fields, one day hoping of making it to the NFL, and even worked with a trainer by the name of Ed Gant. This was his longtime mentor and private coach who helped mold him into a future NFL draft pick. But before Higgins grew into his frame and became an elite receiver, he had to first commit to football as his main sport. He was primarily first a basketball player since elementary school, and Gant said, quote, "That's when it all clicked for him. Jayden is a true basketball player." He had been playing since he was in 3rd grade and was known as a natural shooter who elevated over defenders around the rim and saw a future for himself in the sport. He was a classic late bloomer who had to switch sports, and he had been coached and trained since he was 11 years old, but it would take time before the world would really find out about him. At first, he decided to play both football and basketball at Miami's Gulliver Prep, which was a big-time program, but then after going to the drawing board, he decided to transfer to Miami's Westminster Christian for his junior year, and he had no clue if he'd play football or not in 2019. He figured he would give it a try though, and he was good enough as a receiver to get a handful of FCS scholarships. He was an unranked recruit, and he ended up having 920 receiving yards in his first 2 seasons, but he also kind of got screwed over due to everything going on in the world in 2020, only appearing in 5 games during that difficult time period. It wasn't for a lack of effort, as his former trainer played both with the Arizona Cardinals and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and lobbied Higgins to plenty of Florida schools. They tried to get the Miami Hurricanes on board with Jayden, but it wouldn't happen. No major college football program would offer him a scholarship. As I said, he was at Westminster Christian School, and as a senior had 23 catches for 430 yards and 5 touchdowns in only 5 games. He was an all-county player his junior year, having 27 catches for 490 yards and 4 touchdowns, but was unranked. Still though, he was going to get an opportunity to go to Eastern Kentucky, where Gant said, quote, "You can see the growth from when he was small, and it shows where he comes from, his journey, and the grind he puts into it. Jayden put in so much, and I tried to tell Miami that there's a great kid in your backyard and you need to see him, and you don't just find a 6'4" kid who can move this way." But the Florida schools would overlook him and put a spark into him. He was ranked as the 459th wide receiver in the country, and being an underrated afterthought, having to go play for EKU was fuel for him. He said, quote, "For me at the end of the day, it's always been a look at yourself in the mirror type thing. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself, and I'm going to pick certain people's brains and see what they do well and try to take it. I'm going to be the best version of myself and show it when I'm on the field." He would travel from South Florida all the way to Eastern Kentucky, and he'd end up doing really well there. Higgins would catch 58 passes for 757 yards and 10 touchdowns, and in 2 years at the Colonels, he had a grand total of 1,200 yards, 87 catches, and also 13 touchdowns. 10 of those came in his final season at EKU, and he knew it was time to try to get back to the Power 4. His trainer said, quote, "I have the utmost respect for Eastern Kentucky because they gave him a shot when no one else was making a commitment to him. When he jumped into the portal, there was no bad blood, as they were happy for him to move up. They knew this kid was supposed to be somewhere bigger, and they knew he was one of the top receivers in college football, and they were lucky to have him." Well, where would he go? In today's transfer portal era, it is important not to burn a bridge with a recruit or a player coming out of high school because you never know when they're going to go back in the portal and maybe you could get them on a second try. Iowa State did not have a relationship with Jayden Higgins before he entered the portal, but they had a fighting chance. Schools like Mississippi State, Virginia, Northwestern, and Minnesota also decided to offer Jayden, but he'd end up at Iowa State in the end. Matt Campbell said, quote, "The recruiting process with Jayden was more of who he was than what he did on the football field. He certainly had a really successful career at Eastern Kentucky, but the other things that we were looking for were character, leadership, and someone that could bring a sense of maturity and work ethic." What's interesting is character was just super important to them, as offensive coordinator Nathan Scheelhaus wanted Higgins because of his parents. Obviously, he was a dang good football player too, and when he was recruited to Iowa State, it was expected the 6'4" receiver would be able to play immediately, and Matt Campbell said, quote, "He's been nothing short of exceptional since day one." His transition to Iowa State was smooth, and he credits his teammates for making the process easy. In his first year with the Cyclones back in 2023, he'd end up catching his first career touchdown in Week 2 against Iowa, having 8 catches for 95 yards in that one. He also caught a touchdown in their weird loss on the road to Ohio, and Iowa State was not off to a great start. After a loss to Oklahoma, things were not looking good, but then they rallied off 3 straight wins against TCU, Cincinnati, and Baylor. And in those 3 games, Higgins really blew up, especially against Cincinnati, as in that matchup, he had 6 catches for 172 yards, and then would have a touchdown against Baylor. They unfortunately lost to both Kansas and Texas at the end of the year, but he went for over 100 yards against the Longhorns, and also had a touchdown in their win against a top 20 Kansas State team. Higgins had a really good regular season, but would save his best for last. In the Liberty Bowl against Memphis, Higgins would end up catching 9 passes, which was a season high, and then he also had 214 yards and a touchdown. He blew all his records out of the water, and in total finished with 53 catches for 983 yards and 6 touchdowns. It's also worth noting he was blowing up alongside teammate Jaylen Noel, and Iowa State looked dangerous for 2024. With Rocco Beck back at quarterback, Higgins picked up where he left off. He had a touchdown in their first 5 games, and Iowa State was also 5-0. He helped them beat number 21 Iowa in the Cyhawk game, had over 100 yards in that win against Baylor, and then would continue to feast. He had over 100 yards against West Virginia, had a touchdown against UCF, and all of a sudden Iowa State was 7-0. They were really running towards the college football playoff, but then they blew it. Despite a career-high 10 catches against Texas Tech, they'd lose that game by 1 point, and then they would blow it again to Kansas. Iowa State was pretty much out of the playoff picture, but they would rally off 3 straight wins to finish the season. They beat Cincinnati, he had 9 catches against Utah, and then a touchdown as they once again beat a ranked Kansas State team. Higgins would play in 1 more game for Iowa State in the Big 12 championship, and if they could pull that off, they would make the playoff. It unfortunately didn't work out, as he ended up getting destroyed by ASU, but Higgins had 7 catches for 115 yards. In total, he finished with 87 receptions for 1,183 yards and 9 total touchdowns. Higgins became one of the best wide receivers in Iowa State football history. Oddly enough, Iowa State has been able to have a lot of good receivers over the last couple of years, as guys like Allen Lazard, Hakeem Butler, and Xavier Hutchinson all went off to the NFL, but some believe that Higgins could be the best of them all. He's part of the Mount Rushmore of Iowa State receivers now, and he finished 10th all-time in receptions with 140, 7th in receiving yards with 2,166, and 6th in touchdowns with 15. This also only came in 2 years. In total, in 4 years of college, Higgins had 227 catches for 3,317 yards and 28 touchdowns. He would now go off to the NFL alongside his teammate and was seen as a day 2 pick. Matt Campbell said he had great size, a great catch radius, and was a really good route runner, but his character is what made him even better. Eventually, he was taken in the 2nd round, as he went with pick number 34 to the Houston Texans. Higgins said, quote, "I just feel blessed. I got that call and my family and me were just super excited, and I'm happy to play for a great organization." Higgins was 6'6" and was clocked running a 4.47 40-yard dash time. He's also super productive, obviously had the height, and everyone raved about this guy's character. He said, quote, "I'm just a player that's going to come in and make plays no matter where I'm at on the field. I'm someone who's going to be reliable and explosive, and at the end of the day, I just want to make the team better." But what's also awesome is he got another pleasant surprise, as while he continued to watch the rest of the 2025 NFL Draft, he wondered if the Texans would also go after Jaylen, his teammate. As he predicted, they'd end up deciding to take him. He was taken with the 79th overall selection. Minutes later, the two ended up catching up over the phone, and he said it was surreal. They've been playing over the last 2 years, and apparently also had a popular TikTok page where they went fishing and played basketball. The two guys were super close, and it'll help make the transition to the NFL even easier. The two of them combined for 2,400 yards and 19 touchdowns last year, and they'll now join a Texas offense led by quarterback CJ Stroud, running back Joe Mixon, and wide receiver Nico Collins. With Stephon Diggs going to New England and Tank Dell's status for the season being in question, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for the two rookies, but right now everybody's talking about Higgins. He's already drawn comparisons to Nico Collins, and Higgins apparently smiled when he was asked about their similarities. I guess the Texans were so high on him that they actually gave him the first fully guaranteed contract in NFL history for a second-round pick. His contract was 4 years and worth a total of $11.7 million, and he also received a $5.1 million signing bonus. Again, this doesn't happen, but to be fair, he was one of the earliest picks in the second round. Higgins made NFL history with that deal, and they're going to expect him to be really solid from the get-go. Honestly, I believe he'll probably be the second best wide receiver on the team this year behind Collins, but if Tank Dell can get back on the field, it'll also make things interesting. I think Jalen Noel is also a fun player to watch, but for now, the spotlight is on Higgins. For a guy who had no FBS offers, was not in the 24/7 Sports database, and had to go to Eastern Kentucky, he's done pretty well for himself. He's already made NFL history, and he made Iowa State history, so I can't wait to see what he does next. But what do you guys think? If you're an Iowa State or a Texans fan, what do you think of Jayden Higgins? And who's another player I should cover in my next video? I love doing these rookie spotlights, so be sure to drop a future suggestion down below, leave a like if you didn't support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen, including my video about Torrey Horton. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.